All right, well, hello everybody. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar on making storytelling part of your sales process, presented by CPSA accredited partner, Christy Scarrow of Lighthouse 9. In today's world where attention spans are short and competition is fierce, storytelling has become an essential tool for sales professionals who want to stand out, build trust, and close more deals. Today, we will cover insights into the psychology of storytelling and how it can influence the decision-making process of your customers. You'll be able to discover some practical tips and techniques for incorporating storytelling into your sales conversations, including how to structure a compelling story and communicate it with confidence. And today, you'll walk away with some actionable strategies and techniques to incorporate storytelling into your sales process. As mentioned, our presenter today is Christy Scarrow, partner at Lighthouse 9. Christy is a consultant, executive coach, keynote speaker, and a best-selling author of the book Truth Warriors. She draws on over 20 years of sales leadership experience with firms including Revlon, Mars Canada, and Reckitt Beckinsale. As a partner at Lighthouse 9, she leads the insights and organizational accountability practice and supports clients in the areas of strategy, leadership, development, change management, and sales effectiveness. Her current clients include retailers, manufacturers, and professional services. She's passionate about working with sales leaders to deliver growth and meaningful change. Now, just for some quick housekeeping rules on today's session. The session will, of course, be recorded and will be sent to you afterwards. We are encouraging webcams on if it allows to get a little bit of face time with our group and today's presenter, Christy. You can ask questions or make comments using the chat function that you'll see in your Zoom dashboard. They will be addressed when we have an opportunity at the end. And of course, for those of you who are on your CPSA designation pathway, maintaining your professional development units, this session is worth 1 PDU. And as a new CPSA offering, all attendees will receive a certificate of participation accompanying the recording after the session, which can be downloaded and shared on your LinkedIn. Now, without further ado, I will hand it over to Christy to start.
Thank you so much, Rupin. I appreciate it. So I want to start by having you actually think about a conversation that changed your life. Maybe something that was pivotal and made you think differently about the career path you wanted to take, or maybe it was something of a major lesson. It's like that person really imparted me with something that is valuable and impactful. So I want to share mine. And I was, so back, you heard I was a bit in the corporate world for a little while there with a background mostly in sales. And I decided I did want to start off on my own and run my own business. And I was very focused on the insight sides and the sales piece. And I was going to go in and help companies to understand their insights and their business drivers and things like that. And I started up my own brand, my own company. I had a really good clarity as to what I was going to deliver, started to build up a clientele. But I also came across this company called Lighthouse 9. And some of them had actually worked with me at Mars and had done work there. So I knew they were good people and we started to collaborate. And it was not too long after where they said, hey, do you want to come be a partner with us here? And I'll be honest, my first thought was, I don't want to be a consultant like that. That just didn't feel like that, what my path was taking me. And I didn't feel like consultancy was an area that I really wanted to be, or the kind of person I wanted to be. But honestly, the more I got to know them, the more I thought, okay, this is actually the kind of consultancy that I enjoy. It's much more of an alongside advisor, supportive, facilitated. It's not the, bring in our giant books of recommendations and walk away. So I liked it, but at the same time, I was building my own brand and my own company, and it felt really good to finally be doing my own thing. And so I agonized and I thought, do I really want to make this shift and give up everything I've just built for myself over it was about 3 years at that point. And so I actually hired an executive coach, and I talked to him about my concerns, and if I join, I'm going to give up what I'm doing, and I'm not sure about that. And I own my own destiny now. And I came to the decision that I'm not going to join. I need to actually move, try this and see if it's going to work. And so I walked into the office of the founder, who was the one who invited me to join. And I said to him, I'm really sorry. I've done a lot of soul searching, and he knew I was thinking about it. But I don't think I'm ready to join you. I don't think I think I have to try this for me because there's so many things I still want to do. And what he said to me was, I want you to do everything you want to do. I just want you to do it with us. And that changed the trajectory of my life. Because although I'd spent 3 months worth of paying an executive coach, I walked out of there agreeing to be a partner and to join them. And I would say it was one of the best decisions in my career and in my life, because it gave me exposure to some amazing people, number one, but also just to so much more, because I was very focused on the sales and insight side, and I still am. I work a lot with sales teams, but I learned a lot of skills because they come from a place of human capital and people development and leadership development. I started to develop that passion, and it became part of the work that I did. And I wouldn't have had that exposure had I not done that. So there's a few reasons I share that with you. One, I would be remiss to start a webinar on storytelling without telling a story. But let me ask you this. What did you learn about Lighthouse 9 from what I just shared with you? Did I potentially influence your way of thinking about what the founder, or if you were coming for an interview with us, would you have some idea about the kind of place that I work? And, I could have told you that as a list. I could have, at the end of this webinar, or even starting, I could have given you a bit of the credentials. Lighthouse 9, we do consulting, and we're really supportive and of our people, and this is the kind of work we do. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I told you a story about those concepts, so that one, it was hopefully more engaging, and two, you were able to kind of get a feel, not just the facts about the place that I work. So that's where I started this conversation, and I want you to think about the conversations that change your life, because those are probably stories for you, and stories that you might be able to bring to life as you talk about, your company, your service, your offering with your customers. So I wanted to start there, but then that moves me into what some of you are already doing in Mentimeter, and I appreciate that. So Ruplan did drop into the chat the link to this. Some of you have already contributed, or you can scan the QR code with your phone if you find that a little bit easier. And you just heard me tell a story. Some of you already thought about what's a good story for you. What makes a good story? So let me share some of your thoughts. Some of you are still adding. Sorry. So can you see that? What's filling in right now? So interesting enough, some of the things that came out really big. So what the words that are slightly bigger and more central are the ones that are showing more answers. Relatable, connection, engaging. So it's relevant to me. Like, I can relate to it. So when you hear a story, I want to be engaged. Now, engaged can mean different things, but absolutely stories are a way in which we can create that connection. When I see that word is filling itself in quite strongly now as you're completing this question. So yeah, I'm creating a connection with you because you have a better understanding of me, and I am able to relate back to things that are relevant to you. So the story I'm sharing, you've probably been in situations, I'm sure every single one of you maybe started to think about a conversation that changed your life. The other thing that I did in that story that was really important, I started with a question, and I also made it about you. And we'll talk about that as we go through some of the things in storytelling that are really important. Is you need to make sure it connects to them, as you guys are seeing there in the stories that are meaningful to you, that it engages them in a way that feels relevant, relatable. I'm seeing the word emotion now showing up more than it was before. Can you create emotions in your stories that actually generate a concept or a feeling? So I gave an emotion in my story, a bit of angst and discontent, and then a little bit of like, inspiration. And I thought about the emotion I was trying to evoke in the conversation I was having. So thank you for sharing that, because that's exactly what I want you thinking about in the stories that we're going to try to build together and the techniques we're going to talk about. So in sales, and when we're selling and when we're influencing, I want you to think about these core components. What gets their attention? So that engaging piece, which you guys said was a big one for you. What is getting their attention? because we're in a competitive world where your selling messages need to be able to get them to pay attention to what you're offering. Does it actually provide some benefit, some lesson, something that you're truly trying to showcase? Does it solve a problem and create change? So that's one that I'm really going to show you a couple of things to think about in that. And it's ultimately every time you're trying to influence, every time you're in front of a customer, or even internally, or frankly, even your children, if you're trying to influence, you're trying to create something in them to change. And so does your story allow for that and get them to think differently? And also, can it be simple? Because I've seen lots of sales presentations and lots of stories that are fact after fact after fact, or giant pages of decks and all the information. And you don't have to be complicated to tell the story and have your sales message. And lastly, action. Does it create action? The story you're trying to build and think of together needs to drive change and for them to do something differently. So let's talk about some of these components. Drop in the chat if you know what this stands for. WIFM. Brooklyn's smiling. I feel like she may have seen it before. Who knows what WIFM stands for? There you go. What's in it for me? That's and most salespeople will talk about this. So what's in it for me is actually what's in it for them. So I want you always thinking about in your stories, your audience, your customer, what's in it for them. Why are you telling this? What are they going to get this? Why am I in for the money? So I saw that in the chat. So what is their pain points? What are their things that's actually going to concern them? And who is your audience that you're talking to and trying to influence? So I had the opportunity to be sell to both Walmart and Loblaws when I was at Mars Canada. And the buyers were both very different, very different. My Loblaws buyers she was very analytical, and I would go in there and I'd have my presentations of all my numbers and my insights and what was happening in the market and why this would work. And she would say to me, she'd find some number inevitably that I didn't fully understand or fully know the reason behind it. Why is this declining at -5? Some elusive category that I really didn't think she was going to care about. And I'd be like, oh, I don't know. And then it almost became a game between us where I found if I put a number on a page, I had to be able to explain it because every time she would look in detail about the analytics. My Walmart buyer, on the other hand, she'd been on the desk forever. She wouldn't even really look at my pages. One of the first times I went to present her, I had all my insights prepared. I did Loblaws first, moved to Walmart. I had all my insights prepared, my presentation deck, and she basically flipped through it in about 5 seconds, got to the page which has the price I was offering her on the promotion, crossed it off, put something lower and said, give me this, and handed my presentation back to me. So that was my Walmart experience versus Loblaws. Very different. I had to learn that what each of them wanted and was looking for was actually quite different. So what was in it for them? What was their style? What was their expectation? What was their structure? And how did I have to position my information to make sure it was relevant? One of the tools that I love to use to understand both linking back what's relevant and what they're looking for and what I'm trying to do in my story, my presentation, is a belief map. So let me know in the chat if you've ever used this or you're familiar with it. But the intention is understanding what do they believe today and what do you need them to believe to buy from you. That's the essence of it. So it starts in the top left quadrant. What are they currently doing? How are they actually behaving? So are they not listing your product? Are they not buying are they not buying your service? Or what are they currently doing that you want to change? And what are the beliefs that are driving that? So do they believe it's too expensive? Do they believe your competitors offer more support features? Do they believe that it's not unique enough for them to invest in? What do they believe? Because once you uncover that, then you go, okay, what do we want them to do? Well, I want them to buy the product. I want them to list it in their store. I want them to invest in it. I want them to do this promotion. What do I want them to do? Now, what do I have to make them believe or get them to believe, think, and feel to do it? So they have to believe maybe that the price is worth it. Yeah, maybe it's more expensive, but here's all the components. Maybe they need to feel like it is actually something unique that's just for them, and I've customized it for them. So this is a preparation step in your storytelling to think about, how am I going to get them to this new place? And once we get there, what your story needs to do, what your message needs to do is beyond just what you want them to think. And a lot of sales presentations are do a lot of the, here's what my product offers, right? This is what I can do for you. But going beyond that, what do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? I saw emotion come up as in Mentimeter, emotion, making that connection. Are we walking into our sales presentations with an understanding of what emotion we're trying to evoke in our messaging? And that emotion might be anxiety. You're actually wanting them to be a little bit anxious and wondering if maybe they're missing an opportunity, or maybe that emotion is inspiration, because what you're bringing them is really going to change their business and their life. So it's really important that you've thought through not just the think and the fact and what you actually want them to understand about what you're offering, but also what you want them to feel. And the thing I find sometimes is even the do doesn't become clear. I offer sales coaching, and I review people's presentations, usually as sort of intercession work for training. And a lot of times they come and I start with, what do you want them to do after this? Because they've given, like, their presentations come together and they provide them with a lot of information. I'm like, what do you really want them to do? And usually they can answer it after a bit of thought, but it's not necessarily the first place they go. And sometimes I find, even when they know what they want to do, the slides they pull together don't actually get them to this place. So for example, I had a client and he's had a couple of slides talking about inflation. And we all know inflation is a concern right now for a lot of people. I said to him, well, why are you talking about inflation in this presentation specifically? What you're trying to do is get your product listed there, and you have a premium product. So help me understand why you're talking about inflation in your presentation. And he said, well, because I know the customer is worried about it. And although I appreciated the relevance and the connection back to, this is a concern for my customer, so I want to make sure I highlight it, I also said, but it doesn't support what you want them to do. What you want them to do is list a premium product. And what you're telling them is that it's inflationary times, so people aren't going to buy premium products. What was interesting is, as we talked it over, he was able to say, you know what? I know during inflationary times that people buy more value packs, bigger pack sizes. So that's one of the items I want to have listed. So I'm going to focus the story that I'm telling on how inflation is a concern. But now inflation is a concern. Well, what does that mean? What are the implications? Because that's going to create some worry in my customer. That's the emotion. But what I actually know is that during inflationary times, that people are going to buy bigger pack sizes, and therefore, here, by the way, here's the perfect product for you. It's the story woven together. And so that's what I want you to think about, is how does that message, every slide you put together, every word you say, does it create the change you're trying to do? Does it create the emotion, the action, and inform them in the way that you want to? This next piece is really important and a major miss I find. I see a lot of people in my sales coaching when they start their presentation, they start off about them. They start off listing all the benefits of their company or their product or what they offer. And what's really important is you get your customer to think about, why do I need to change? Why do I need to do whatever you want me to do now, before you ever talk about why you? I know I had a VP once, and it was mandated in the front of every sales presentation. They had to have a front page that talked about their sustainability efforts. And wonderful, sustainability is a great initiative, and it may even be relevant. But you started off with something that was all about how awesome you are. And you didn't start with why I even need to listen to you, why I need to change, what is the inspiration for change for me right now? So think about that. Is every presentation starting about them, or does it start with you? So how do we get their attention? How do we get their attention? So I'll tell a story to illustrate this. There was a saleswoman, and she wanted to go up in the organization and prove to her boss that she was a great salesperson. And she walked in and said to her, I believe that I'm an amazing salesperson. I can sell you this glass of water right here, this glass of water. And her VP looked at her and said, "What the heck would I need to buy a glass of water from you?" And she goes, "Well, it's only $10. Like, you can buy this glass of water for $10. She's like, "Why on earth would I pay $10 for a glass of water? I can walk to the kitchen and get a cold bottle of water and for free." And the woman lights a match and drops it into the wastebasket, catches on fire, and says, "Glass of water." So obviously, I don't recommend that as a sales process, but why would that have been successful? Why would they be more willing to buy that bottle of water? What did that salesperson do to encourage that sale? There's some thoughts in the chat. Yeah, isn't that urgency and need? Exactly, urgency and need. You guys got it. So I'm going to send you back to Mentimeter for another minute. So you can either refresh the browser, or again, the QR code's here. If you already have it on your phone, you can refresh it. But I just want to ask you this quick poll. When you're starting sorry, I have to move forward, I think, for you too. When you are starting a presentation or a sales pitch, what's the most effective way to get their attention? Is it with a problem or an opportunity? Not really your right answer, because I've had some strong debates. I have an opinion about it, but I've had some big debates about this one. And I'll be fair in saying that I do think it's a little bit situational and it's a little bit buyer dependent. So to be fair on whatever you answer. So let me share back where the poll's coming in. Many of you are suggesting a problem. And that is because we know that a problem is when we can show the challenge, the urgency, the need, then it's much easier to sell the solution. In my experience, customers are more reactive than longer term focused. And so we go in and we can say, "I got this $10 million opportunity, or you could save this amount of money, and look at this." It's a proactive, future focused outlook, but it's not necessarily creating the same urgency. And so I know those that have argued with me about opportunity are looking at the optimistic outlook. But if you really want to inspire change, a problem, having them see the risk in what they're doing, the issues that might be presenting, the challenges that they're facing, actually will help them pay attention to the solution that you are offering. It becomes so much easier to offer a solution that solves a problem than it is to align to an opportunity. So think about that in your messaging. Are you clearly articulating the problem? So speaking of problems in storytelling, I've got 3 separate characters and movies here. You may be familiar with all of them. We've got Cinderella, who obviously had to transform and had some conflict at the beginning of her story, where she was trapped from her evil stepsisters and found her way out to her prince. A little outdated at this point, I get it. Shawshank Redemption, if anyone has seen that, lots of conflict within that. And we have our hero at the end who leaves the situation in a more pleasant way. And then Tony Stark, although ultimately, sort of spoiler alert, did not end well for him. He did save the world. So our hero there. In all of these stories, in every story, there's a problem. There's a conflict. There's something to be solved for and overcome. And if you can help your customer be the hero in their story, in your story, then you can help them through that challenge. So the stories that you want to share are going to be the examples of how maybe others have overcome those challenges, how you believe they can do it, the steps that they need to take. The story arc really is, if you Google the story arc, it always is about creating that natural tension and that conflict that exists, and then making us feel better at the end. Most stories will end that way because we want that. We want that, like, help us get past this angst, help us feel that we can solve these problems. So that's how I encourage you to think about your story. And the idea of creating this concept of positive tension, the red line is kind of maybe the more traditional way that we've done presentations. And, we pitched our ideas, we proposed a solution. And at the end, we're like, you interested? You want to buy? It looks good. And what we're doing in that way is we're not creating this tension throughout the process. We're not taking moments to make them feel like I have to be paying attention. This is really important. So the more you can identify problems, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the SPIN technique in sales, SPIN questioning. Drop it in the chat if you've heard of SPIN, if you know what it's a very old methodology, but it's a questioning technique that actually, if you can remember all the acronyms, double points for you in the chat. It's a technique of questioning that actually draws out problems and implications. More importantly, implications, because my problem might be, I'm worried about supply chain, but the implication is like, if I don't ship this out, I'm going to get yelled at by my customer. Those are deeper worries, and I might lose that customer overall, and then I will not get my bonus. And there's deeper underlying emotions and connections that if you start to draw them out in your story, and you might be able to tell, Muhammad gets the bonus points for the SPIN definition. If you'll notice, this graph that is sort of the tension is similar to the story arc. It does not, it has the beginning kind of creating tension in the middle, and then starting to say, hey, I've got some solutions for you. Does this feel good to you? What else are you still wondering about? How can we move on now? As opposed to like, here I am, here I am, here I am, here I am. Are we good to go? Because by the end, you may not have lost them. You may not have covered the right things, and you can adjust. You can adjust your presentation and your story as you go, and ask for, if you know along the way that they're either aligned or misaligned. So create that tension throughout. So the real story structure, kind of to summarize, is this idea of starting with a hook, something about that relevant problem. And like, why are you there? What problem are you trying to solve? What is the issue that's going to drive change? Why do they need to change? And why now? So, I see you're losing market share. This is a great one to tell in a story itself. I was talking to some of the customers, or we're doing some consumer research, and this is what they told us. Or I was in one of your stores and I saw that the shelves were really empty. Or I have another client who's really struggling with supply chain issues. Is that happening for you? So you can bring in even mini stories of examples of how you've seen some of their problems show up, because it may be difficult to say this is your problem if you're not even sure. You could ask it. You can tell it as other relevant mini stories to define that. And then it becomes about your solution. What are your insights? How are you solving the problem? And of course, the ask. And anyone in sales will hear this, how important the commitment is and the next steps. And I do find a lot of even seasoned salespeople are nervous about this piece. What is my commitment at the end of the presentation? It shouldn't be, here we go, here's what I got. Thank you very much, goodbye. It needs to also be, what's next, right? Do you agree? What are you still wondering about? That's one of my favorite questions now to end a sales call is, what are you still wondering about? Or what concerns have I not addressed? Or what are the things that are still important to you that we didn't talk about today? Open-ended questions that ensure alignment, as well as an understanding of where do we go from here? Are we meeting again? What's the next steps for you? So think about that in your story. And as you're preparing your presentations and your thoughts, this is something I want to encourage you to think about, is always start with the purpose and objectives. What do I want them to think, feel, and do? And then think about it almost like a script. I don't know if you did this. I know you still do this, or we're very reliant sometimes on what marketing or category teams that went forward on me, offer us. So we have other material. If you I don't always want to start from scratch. If I can draw from other material, I totally do that. But be careful that you don't build your slides first from other material, from marketing material. Think about the story you're trying to tell. Create almost a storyboard of what do I want them to know, and what are the main messages, and what I'm going to use slides. What are each of those slides going to include? And then you start adding sort of the visuals and the pieces, and of course, practicing the messaging and maybe considering what objections you might get, all of that fun stuff. So, and then more specifically, I'm going to give you, an idea of a storyboard concept, a simple tool that has you think about, okay, if I had to build out a presentation that's going to be a story that I'm going to utilize, is what is that hook? It should start with the hook, not about you, always about them. Then you can link it. Then you can link it to how it solves the problem, how you're offering. And then you can provide the proof, again, through stories as much as possible. What are some of the business cases that are going to prove that rationale? What are they, those belief points that you're trying to work against? Those are your proof points. I know they believe it's more expensive. Let me show you something that shows it's not. Now I can recommend and understand what the close is from there. Where do we go from here? And then if you've got a million other slides as backup, if you need that, if you're the kind of person like I love to present it all, I totally encourage you to try to draw it back and keep it in backup in case it comes up and then you feel like you've got it there. But the simpler the story, the more effective you're able to communicate your message. So I want to give you an example of how I use this with a client. So I was working with a disinfecting company, as it turns out, kind of near the beginning of COVID. So good news for them. And they were trying to really craft a strong story about the linking back to disinfecting being obviously a really key issue and very, very top of mind for consumers. So the way it came out, or we kind of built it collectively, is the hook was a reminder that people are really nervous about disinfecting solutions and germs, and they're seeking out things. Well, what's your link? You know what, Mr. Retailer, Miss Retailer, you don't have enough space in your store for it. You're going to build more space for these types of products because COVID has shifted behavior. You need to carry a full portfolio. In that instance, what we knew we were trying to do is dedicate more space to this category to grow the overall shelf space, which is not an easy thing to do at a retailer. And then we had some proof points. So why is that? Well, consumers are looking for products they can't find. Forgetting the supply issues, we knew that was an issue just by shelf dedication. We know that if you actually dedicate more space for it, we have more sales. And we know that if you have multiple brands on the shelf, you'll have more sales. To be totally honest, these proof points were only hypotheses. We didn't even know if they were 100% true because we built the story before we found the slides. We built the story and said, if we can prove to these retailers that consumers are looking for it, that those that have done it are successful, and that you have to have multiple brands on the shelf, that will prove our story. And then we have a specific recommendation. Just give it 4 feet more space. And then what's the next step? You know, when's your next shelf review? Can I get you something? And then it may have some backup slides. So it's a great tool because I know if anybody like me, and I just would start throwing together PowerPoint charts. But if I take a step back before I do a PowerPoint chart or really, you know, I do this. What is my messaging and what does my chart need to demonstrate as part of that? The last thing I'll say about that, and just in terms of your proof points, because this is another mistake I see a lot. And it's the concept of how the proof points we use are more about the features instead of the benefits. So think about the features of an umbrella, right? You can say it's unbreakable, it's waterproof, it's got a beautiful wooden handle. But the true benefit is that it actually protects us from the rain or the sun. And so if you sell technical or scientific products, sometimes this is a challenge because I think you want to be able to illustrate like all the scientific features that your products offer. So I do a lot of work with vets and people selling into vets, and they have a very specific scientific language, right? They can talk to the vets in a way that they understand. And it's okay to, and the good news is it's relevant in the language, but also what happens is I find that the benefit is not discussed or then also communicated through to the end user, to the consumer. So if you're not offering the benefit, as an example, when I would talk to them about like, what does this product have? They would say, well, glucosamine. Most of you might know glucosamine is good for joints. So I would get to that point and I might say, okay, so glucosamine, if this product has it, that's a feature, it's good for joints. But I could get even more in depth and create it as a story. How could I make this into a story if I was telling it into a vet about why they had to carry it and a story that created emotion? I could say, you know what? My dog was getting older and I saw that she kept trying to get up on the bed and she'd fall and it was heartbreaking. And the vet that I use recommended this product. So now she can get up on the bed and she sleeps with me every night. And I love that. And, you know, my husband doesn't always appreciate it, but I love it. So it can be a story that's about the benefit to me. And even with a scientific product that has a lot of characteristics, sure, you might need to list all the details and the technical aspects, but if you can clearly link back to how did this change my life, and what emotion could it, could it evoke? Then, and I try to use a little bit of humor. If you can build that in, those are the great components of storytelling. Those are the engaging pieces that you as a group said are really essential to a good story. It engages them because it's not just about listing out everything you offer and what that means. It connects back to something that truly is going to have an impact on my life. So I'm going to send you back to Mentimeter one last time to play a little bit of a fun game. We're going to use the chat at some point too, but I'm not going to show you this one. I want you to put into Mentimeter a sentence that describes a movie. So if I were going to do this, I'd put in the ship hits an iceberg and sinks. You might have an idea about what movie I'm referring to. So think of your own for a second. Think of your own example of a sentence that would describe a movie. Give you a couple of minutes because I know for some it takes a bit to go. I think of a movie, and ironically, there's so many times when I get the same movie. I don't know how that happens. There's so many movies, but you guys still seeing it? I just did something funny on my screen here. I'm always smiling by the descriptions. Going to give you another 30 seconds just to put your thoughts in there. For some reason my slide closed down on me. All right, so here's the game. Now you have to have the chat open. I'm not going to show you the list. And when I say the sentence, I want you to put the name of the movie in the chat. Okay? Dinosaurs go wild in a park. Oh my goodness, that's going to go so fast. I can say, who got it first? You guys are fast typers. David Burton got it first. All right, let's see how fast you can go on the next one, dude. A man dressed as a bat fights crime. Oh my goodness, David, how fast a typer are you? David gets it first again, but I got lots of people getting it right. Let's see, lots of good ones in here. Interesting. Orphan boy gets taken from his aunt and uncle to learn about his secret powers. A bit of a theme going. Oh, this one's less certain. I feel like this is Superman, but some people went Spider-Man. I can see that. I went there first myself. Okay, so I don't think it's Batman though. Although I don't know. Okay, too many choices for that one. No one gets it wrong there. Hold on. Please give me a second to make sure I see everyone's responses here. And then to meet her, accidentally shut again. I want to get a couple more in and then we'll move on. It's not letting me go down. There we go. Okay. I'm trying to get out of the superhero theme here and find something. Lots of superhero. The girl falls in love with the beast who captures her. I'm going to scan down. Beauty and the Beast. David's amazing at this game. You should look at this professionally. Classic horror movie that finds that a man haunts children's dreams. Oh, multiple movies I see. Nightmare on Elm Street. I think you got that, Muhammad. And I'll do one more. Let's see if this is an older one. The children find a new world inside a closet door. Narnia. Sandine wins in, I think it is. Sorry, it's going through so fast on my chat. All right, there's a reason for my madness here. Thank you for your patience on that. It's because, and there's many great examples here I could have shared you. We can see and summarize a 2.5-hour movie, sometimes longer, in one sentence, right? We get it. We can, so thinking about your messaging, have you thought through the simple soundbite that explains it? Back to that idea of writing blank, long presentations, and you feel like you have to put it all in there. The reality is, all of these ideas, I said the ship is sinking, Titanic. We said the man in a bat suit, easy, right? Simple summaries. So think of the very, very one little soundbite that you want your customer to get out of that story. And think about the stories in your life that could highlight that. So if I really want them to believe this, let me think of the stories, the very short, simple stories I could offer. So I like this quote because it takes longer to make things simpler and shorter than it does to actually drop it all in there. And so if you're dropping a whole bunch of slides in there because you want to have it all in there, you probably haven't thought through how to make the message simple, relevant, personal, maybe engaging, because it's a lot. And we see those slides that have tons of words on them or data points on them, and it's complex. And we don't actually like complex things. We like simple things that can illustrate the point. So that's my encouragement to you, is really think about how do you make it simpler. So that takes me to the end, and I want to remind people to remember, they're not going to remember what you tell them, not just the think, it's the feel. People are going to remember how you made them feel. So thinking about what you're trying to do in your sales messaging and what the feelings you're trying to evoke. I will say one more thing, because I'm going to want to encourage you to keep in touch and would love for you to connect with me. But the other thing I would ask you to think about is, I told a number of different stories, and this can also be a sales pitch for me, right? So if you think about some of the things I talked about that showcased a little bit about the work that I do, hopefully you know now that I do sales coaching and sales training, and that was a little bit intentional. My main intention was to give you some tangible tools, but at the same time, I wanted to provide stories that also showed the work that I do, and in a way that was engaging and interesting and relevant, and hopefully it was. So I know there'll be an opportunity right now for questions, but also if you want to reach out to me directly, I'm happy to answer those questions. I'm very new to this. I've taught storytelling for quite some time, but I'm quite passionate about it because I see it being such an amazing tool that I continue to invest in and try to build up to be able to better influence and have impact on people around me. So with that, I will go to questions, and you can drop them in the chat. I can see some of your faces as well. So I think we have the ability and I'm trying to look as well. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see people.
Thanks, Christy.
So I see a question in here. Am I okay? I don't know, Rupin, if you saw any questions before. We didn't sort of make that offer, but I don't think I saw any questions fly by.
No, our first one is with Darren. He just put in a good question here. So how do you start with why they should change first if you were new to the industry and they've never heard of you? I need to tell them who we are, right?
And you will, but what you want to do when you tell them who you are is make sure you reflect back to like why they care. Because what could happen is, let me tell you all the great things about us, but what's actually super relevant is something specific to them. So if you knew their problem, then even if your slides later on, like, here's my understanding of the industry and some of the challenges in the industry, is that happening for you? That's linking it back to them and why they should change and why it's a challenge. And then okay, so here's what I'm doing that creates that. And even if you have a list of 5 things, but if they say, you know what, my biggest challenge right now is that I'm looking, as I'm not sure if my logistics is scalable, for example, then okay, let me focus in on that. Let me tell you about how we can do that more. Whereas if you start with, you know what, we have, I'm just going to use this as an example. If we have a logistics service that is scalable, but we can get you through customs and we have all these software tools, wonderful. But what they're actually super worried about is that I got to scale up quickly. I don't know if I have a provider that can offer that to me. Okay, let me focus there. So think of it that way. You start with a list. It may not all be relevant. And that's the benefit of starting with them and clarifying, ideally with questions about what some of the challenges are. And you can start from a place of what you think you already know. I think these are some of the challenges. Are these affecting you? So it's really easy to start with you because you want to let them know about you, but you need to understand where to talk, where your key talking points should be. Awesome question. You will receive a copy of the slide deck, by the way. I'm happy to, I think that becomes downloadable, Ruplin. Like I can send some of the as a PDF, some of the tools, not obviously all the pictures and such, but just some of the reference.
For sure. And
Okay.
And along with that, so just after today's session, we'll receive a recording of today's video. So you'll get that as well.
Any other questions that if you want to raise your hand or drop into the chat or things that you're still wondering about? Quiet group.
A lot of big thank yous, Christy, on today's session in the chat for sure.
I appreciate everyone's time and engagement and getting to see many of your faces on the screen. I appreciate that as well. And as I said, I really encourage you to think about how can I tell this in a story and how can I make it about them? If you get nothing else from this, those are my big things. Make it about them, make it engaging.
Oh, here's one from Tommy. Is it good to start with what you know about the prospect?
Yeah, to some extent. And that could be, and I would do it obviously in a way that you're validating. So you've got to be careful to assume that you know, but this is what I've understood, or what I've been told, or what my research has shown, because it shows that you're prepared, right? So I think it is really good to come from that place and then inquire, right? Is that the case? Is that still true? Am I right in that thinking? So be very careful that you're not saying, I know this is a problem for you. Like sometimes when I talk about sharing the problem first, it can either come from a question. You might have insights or data points that say, you know what, I'm looking at this research and it's showing that your area of business is trending down, or this is a big problem for your industry. And then you could say, is that true for you? Are you finding that as well? And that validates it. Same with what you know about the prospect. Like I've heard that this is a bit about your business. It shows that you've done your research. So the spin selling that I can't remember who was it Muhammad? Somebody got that right. Is a great technique you can look into, which is all questions to understand and connect back what you understand about them and the problems they have with your solution, all through questioning. So it's really interesting. So if it comes from a place of questioning, absolutely start with your prospect as well. Yes, thank you, Sharu, about the emotion, because it's easily missed. It's something in my own sales process probably many years ago I didn't think about. I'm a facts person. If you're the kind of person that is influenced by facts and logic, then it may not occur to you, because if you're selling that way and they're not a facts and logic person as much, then they're actually going to go like, I don't think that's true. And I've had so many salespeople express frustration that, I mean, it's a no-brainer why they would do this. And so I'm like, so what do they actually believe then? Like they must believe something different. They're not doing it. So it doesn't matter how many facts you throw at them, they are not doing what you need them to do. So maybe there's fear there that it's not going to be the right fit for them. Maybe they fully believe in it, but the people around them don't. So now your strategy changes. And they might tell you that it may not actually be true, but it's what are they, you have to uncover what they truly believe. And the emotion is that part of it, because often there is a fear or something in an emotional reaction to why someone isn't doing anything, which underlines their belief. And so drawing it out, trying to understand or hypotheses about what their belief could be. You might not get it. You might go in and go, I think they believe this, and now I'm going to give them some proof points to try to change that belief, and they still don't do what you want them to do. But that's why sales is fun, right? You get to go back in the next time and try again. But trying to uncover that belief and connecting that back to the emotion is really going to be key. Thank you.
I think that's all for questions today, Christy.
Wonderful.
Well,
thank you, everyone.
Yes, and on behalf of CPSA, no, I just wanted to thank you very much, Christy, for today's session. I know how valuable the insight from today's session has been. A lot of great commentary from today's attendees as well. Thank you so much for that. And I want to wish everybody a great Wednesday. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Please hold on for our recording. It'll take a couple of days for me to get that over to you, but you'll receive the recording as well as our certificate of attendance as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day now. Bye.